The lights dimmed slowly, as if the entire arena were holding its breath in anticipation of the woman who had become a symbol of power, vulnerability, and transcendence. Whitney Houston, an icon whose voice could soften storms and awaken courage, was moments away from stepping onto the stage. Thousands of people waited, vibrating with the kind of excitement that only her presence could ignite. But on that particular night, something extraordinary was destined to happen, something that had nothing to do with fame, spotlight, or choreography. Backstage, hidden from the roar of the crowd, a young girl stood trembling beside a worn equipment case. Her dress was simple, borrowed, and slightly too big for her small frame. Her name was Amara, the daughter of a housekeeper who worked tirelessly in the homes, hotels, and dressing rooms of others, one of many women who built their lives on resilience and quiet sacrifice. She had never been invited to a stage, much menos a stage like this one. Yet tonight, fate, unexpected, bold, almost miraculous, would place her there. Whitney had met Amara only minutes earlier. The girl had been helping her mother fold freshly steamed wardrobe pieces when Whitney overheard her humming softly. It wasn't the kind of humming one does absent-mindedly. It was pure, steady, the sort of tone that carried emotion deeper than words. Whitney paused, turned, and asked the girl to sing, just a single line. Amara obeyed, voice shaking but true. And Whitney, moved far more than she allowed anyone to see, made a decision that even her team couldn't predict. Now, out on the stage, the crowd erupted as Whitney's silhouette appeared in a cascade of blue and gold lights. She smiled, radiant, timeless, and lifted the microphone to greet her audience. But instead of launching into her opening number, she paused. Her expression softened, with a kind of private conviction. "There's someone special I want you all to meet tonight," she said. Backstage, Amara froze. The world didn't know it yet, but in a few moments, a woman at the peak of global stardom would share her platform with a girl who had grown up invisible to most. What followed would shake the audience to its core, spark whispers around the world, and forever change the life of a child who believed she had no place beyond the background. This was not a planned performance. This was an act of courage, empathy, and raw human connection. And it began with a single gesture, Whitney turning, extending her hand, and calling the young girl into the light. Backstage had a rhythm of its own, almost like a living creature breathing through cables, hurried voices, blinking lights, and the familiar scent of makeup mixed with the metallic warmth of equipment. For Whitney Houston, that organized chaos was comforting, almost home. But for Amara, an 11-year-old girl seeing everything for the first time, the world behind the curtain felt too big, too loud, and too dazzling. She watched her mother work with quick, precise hands, folding golden and red gowns that shimmered even under the dull backstage lights. Amara held one corner of a long dress, her fingertips brushing the sequins with reverence, as if she were touching a queen's robes. In a way, she was... "Amara, be careful with the hem, sweetheart," her mother whispered, trying to stay calm despite the rush. "Yes, Mama," the girl replied, doing her best to look helpful, though her hands trembled slightly. What Amara didn't know was that, at that exact moment, Whitney Houston was walking down the side corridor, followed by 2 assistants and a frantic stylist complaining about a tiny detail on the stage outfit. Whitney seemed to hear everything and nothing at once, her mind focused, serene, and distant in the way only true performers understood. Then something caught her attention. Something soft, unexpected, almost magical. A melody, faint but in tune, shy but full of soul. Whitney stopped. Her assistants took several more steps before realizing she was no longer behind them. "Whitney, everything okay?" one asked. She lifted her hand gently, requesting silence. The sound was coming from the dressing room area. Curiosity pushing her forward, Whitney opened the door just enough to peek in, and there she found the girl. Small, thin, with eyes brighter than any rhinestone in the room, clutching a gown almost as big as she was. Amara's mother nearly dropped the steamer when she realized who had just walked in. "Oh my, Miss Houston. I'm so sorry." She shouldn't. Whitney murmured, smiling softly as she stepped inside with the calm assurance of someone who knew exactly what she was searching for. Was that you singing? Amara froze. Her heart seemed to beat in her throat. I'm sorry. I didn't ask if you meant to, Whitney said gently. I asked if it was you. The girls swallowed hard and nodded. Whitney knelt down so they were eye to eye. May I hear it again? Her mother stepped in anxiously. It's not necessary, Miss Houston. She only sings for fun. Whitney ignored the excuse, not out of disrespect, but because she recognized something in that trembling little voice. A rawness, a truth, a spark. Sing for me, Amara. The name rolled off her tongue effortlessly, as if she already knew it. Amara took a breath, closed her eyes, and sang. The note she released was pure, crystalline, impossibly beautiful coming from such a small body. The melody wavered at first, but as she opened herself to it, her voice grew, steady, emotional, and real. A chill ran down Whitney's spine. It wasn't common for something or someone to surprise her. Certainly not a child. When Amara finished, she opened her eyes slowly, bracing herself for criticism or reprimand. But Whitney was smiling, a smile full of pride and astonishment. You have a gift, she said softly, touching the girl's arm. And gifts are not meant to be hidden. Amara didn't know how to respond. No one had ever told her anything like that. May I do something? Whitney asked suddenly. Her mother's eyes widened. Miss Houston, the show starts in 10 minutes. You really don't have to. I know exactly what I'm doing, Whitney replied, calm but unwavering. She stood up, reached out her hand toward the little girl, and said, Tonight, you're coming on stage with me. The world stopped spinning for Amara. And right there, in that impossible moment, her life began to change forever. The announcement hit the room like a lightning strike. Amara's mother nearly dropped the gown she was steaming. One of Whitney's assistants blinked hard, unsure if she had heard correctly. Even Amara herself stood frozen, staring up at the superstar with a mixture of awe and disbelief. On stage, the girl whispered. Whitney nodded with calm certainty, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Yes, sweetheart. Just one moment with me. Nothing complicated. You'll be right by my side. But, Miss Houston, her mother stuttered, stepping forward with a trembling voice, she's just a child. She can't. What will the managers say? What if she gets scared? What if? Whitney placed a gentle hand on the woman's shoulder. Her voice was soft, but there was a fire behind her eyes. I take full responsibility. No one will blame her, and no one will trouble you. She has a voice. I want the world to hear it. The mother swallowed, torn between fear and pride. No one famous had ever noticed her daughter. No one important had ever said Amara was special. Life had been about surviving, working quietly, staying invisible. But Whitney had just ripped the veil of invisibility apart. But she doesn't have anything to wear, the mother whispered weakly, searching for any excuse that might slow this impossible moment down. Whitney smiled. She'll wear her own clothes. She doesn't need anything fancy. Her voice is the shine. Amara looked down at her modest dress, simple, white cotton with tiny embroidered flowers her mother had sewn herself. She suddenly felt exposed, small, out of place. How could she stand next to someone like Whitney Houston? How could she step onto a stage designed for thousands of eyes? Whitney crouched to meet her gaze again. Amara, listen to me, she said softly. You don't need sequins or silk. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be brave. The girl's breath trembled. But what if I mess up? Then you mess up, Whitney said matter-of-factly. That's all right. Do you know how many times I messed up as a child? More than I can count. But singing isn't about perfection. It's about truth. And you have truth in your voice. It was the first time anyone had ever told Amara her voice mattered. The words wrapped around her heart like warm light. A stage manager burst into the room suddenly. Miss Houston, we're ready for sound check, and the crowd is already chanting. We have to go. Whitney raised a finger, signaling him to wait. Change of plans. Bring a spare in-ear piece. And a second mic. The man blinked. A second mic? For her, Whitney said, nodding toward Amara. The stage manager stared at the young girl as if Whitney had just declared she'd be performing with a ghost. But one look at Whitney's expression told him not to argue. Right away, he muttered before rushing off. As the room emptied, Amara felt her knees shaking. I'm scared, she whispered. That means you care, Whitney replied. And caring is good. Whitney gently took the girl's hand and guided her toward the hallway. The sound of the crowd, thousands of voices buzzing, laughing, shouting, echoed through the walls like a distant storm. The closer they walked to the stage, the louder the thunder became. Amara's heart pounded, so hard it hurt. Miss Houston? She asked in a tiny voice. Yes, sweetheart. Why are you doing this for me? Whitney stopped walking, turned to her, and smiled with a warmth that reached her eyes. Because when I was your age, she said softly, someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Now it's my turn to pass that gift on. Amara blinked, tears gathering in the corner of her eyes. Those words, simple and sincere, anchored her. Whitney squeezed her hand. Ready? No, Amara admitted truthfully. Whitney laughed. Good. We go anyway. And together, hand in hand, they stepped toward the light that waited just beyond the curtain. The roar of the crowd slammed into us the moment we stepped backstage. It wasn't just noise, it was a physical force, like stepping into a wall of sound. The stage lights pulsed against the curtains, warm and blinding even from behind. Crew members rushed back and forth, checking cables, adjusting cameras, calling out cues with quick urgency. Amara stepped closer to me, her small fingers tightening around my hand. I could feel her pulse, a frantic little drumbeat, bouncing through her skin. A technician approached with 2 microphones. Second mic is hot, he said, looking briefly at Amara with confusion. You sure about this, Miss Houston? I didn't answer. My eyes stayed on the little girl whose world was about to shift forever. She looked terrified. Her dress, a simple white cotton piece that barely reached her knees, looked painfully out of place among glittering gowns and sequined costumes. Her shoes were plain. Her hair wasn't styled. She was a child from a world no one ever applauded. And yet tonight they would. I knelt in front of her again. Hey, I whispered, sensing her panic. Talk to me. I can't breathe, Amara stuttered, her voice trembling. My chest hurts. I can't do this. Everyone's going to look at me. They'll laugh. They'll say I don't belong. Her fear was raw, heartbreaking, familiar. I cupped her cheeks gently. Look at me. Look right at me. Her eyes lifted, wide, dark, desperate. You belong because you have a voice. Not because of a dress. Not because of fame. Not because of who your mother works for. You belong because you have something real inside you. Something that can touch people. A tear rolled down her cheek. I wiped it away with my thumb. You don't have to prove anything tonight. You just have to sing one note.
1.
If you can manage one note with honesty, that's enough. One note, she whispered. 1. I held up my finger. If your voice comes out shaky, that's okay. If it cracks, that's okay too. This isn't about perfection. It's about courage. She swallowed hard. And if I fail, then I'll fail right next to you, I said. We're in this together. Something softened in her expression, fear still there, but no longer suffocating. The stage manager leaned toward us. Miss Houston, curtain in 10 seconds. I stood, took a deep breath, and squeezed her hand. Ready? She hesitated. Then, in the smallest voice imaginable, she whispered, Yes. The curtain lifted. The stage exploded with blinding white light. The audience erupted, thousands rising to their feet the moment I stepped into view. Cameras panned. Screens flashed my image across the stadium walls. I felt the familiar energy, the rush, the adrenaline, the pressure of being Whitney Houston. But tonight wasn't about me. I guided Amara forward, letting her stand half a step behind me as the cheers thundered through the arena. She flinched, overwhelmed, instinctively shrinking. I leaned down and whispered into her ear, "Stay close. You're safe." The crowd quieted naturally, sensing something unusual. No band started playing. No intro music rolled in. Just silence. I lifted my microphone, and my voice echoed across the stadium. "Tonight," I said, "I want to share something beautiful with you all. A young girl with a gift. A voice that deserves to be heard." Gasps rippled through the audience as heads turned toward Amara. She froze. Absolutely still. Fear surged through her again, and for a moment, I thought she might run. So I took her hand and lifted it gently into the light. A spotlight followed, isolating her in a delicate blue glow. Her breath hitched. Her body shook. Her eyes filled with tears. I leaned in, my voice barely audible except to her. "Just one note, sweetheart." She closed her eyes. The audience held its breath. Then, Amara opened her mouth. And, the moment the first sound came out, something extraordinary happened. The sound that left Amara's lips was not loud at first. It wasn't powerful or polished. It wasn't the kind of voice that blows the roof off an arena. It was soft, delicate, barely a whisper carried on the wings of fear. Yet somehow, it cut through the stadium like a beam of pure light. A single note. High, pure, unbroken. The kind of note that didn't demand attention, it invited it. Instantly, the arena fell into a silence so deep it felt holy. I watched the girl's shoulders rise and fall as she held that trembling note. Her eyes stayed shut, lashes wet with tears, her small body shaking as if she were pouring every ounce of courage she possessed into that single breath. Then the silence was shattered. Not by applause, not by cheers, but by something unexpected, something sharp. A microphone screeched somewhere near the edge of the stage, followed by a frantic voice from a crew member. "Kill the second mic. She's not authorized. Someone cut the feed." I turned sharply. A producer, the same one who'd argued with me earlier, was waving his arms, panicked. His headset dangled from his ear, and he was yelling at the sound engineers like the girl's voice was a threat, an emergency, something dangerous. "Shut it down. Shut it down now." The crowd heard the commotion. So did Amara. Her note faltered, trembling uncontrollably as her eyes snapped open. Confusion and fear overwhelmed her face. She thought she was in trouble. She thought she'd done something wrong. My chest tightened with anger, so fierce it almost choked me. I stepped in front of her protectively and threw a glare toward the producer, so sharp it could have cut through steel. "Don't you dare touch that mic," I said, my voice amplified across the arena. The audience erupted instantly, cheers bursting like fireworks, voices rising in a wave of emotion and support. They didn't know what was happening backstage, but they understood one thing. I was defending that little girl. The producer froze, thrown off by the crowd's reaction. His face flushed, but he didn't move again. Amara was still shaking. I turned back to her and crouched slightly, so my eyes met hers. "You're okay?" I whispered. "You're doing beautifully. Don't listen to anything else. Just me. Just the music inside you." "I heard them," she whispered back, voice breaking. "They're mad. They don't want me here." "They don't matter," I said firmly. "You belong because I say you belong. And because you've earned this moment." Her breath shuddered. "But I'm scared." "I know," I said softly. "Everyone you admire was scared the first time they stood in the light. Courage doesn't mean not being scared. It means singing anyway." Her eyes glistened, but slowly, very slowly, her trembling eased. I lifted her hand again, raising it gently for the crowd to see. "She has a voice," I said into the microphone, my voice echoing across the stadium, "and no one has the right to silence it." The audience roared, louder than before. The sound washed over Amara, filling her with something powerful and transformative. Her chest expanded with a shaky breath. "Do you want to try again?" I whispered. She nodded. So I stepped back half a pace. The spotlight widened around her. Her chin lifted slightly. Her small hands clenched at her sides as she gathered every ounce of courage she had left. Then she sang again. But this time it was different. Stronger.
Clearer.
A note that floated, rose, and shimmered across the arena like a spark of magic rooted in pure humanity. The crowd gasped, not in shock, but in awe. Something was happening, something real, raw, undeniable. And as that note grew, swelling with a confidence she didn't know she possessed, I felt the air change. The people, the energy, the atmosphere. The stadium wasn't just listening. It was feeling. And Amara was transforming right before my eyes, from a frightened child into someone who understood, maybe for the first time in her life, that her voice mattered. But just as the moment reached its peak, a sudden shout came from backstage. A sound of panic, rapid footsteps. Something urgent, something wrong. And I turned just in time to see a crew member sprinting toward us with terror in his eyes. "Whitney," he shouted. "We have a problem." The moment shattered, and the danger we had been trying to ignore finally broke through. The crew member's face was pale, almost ghostly under the stage lights. His chest heaved as if he had sprinted the entire length of the arena. The panic in his eyes instantly set off alarm bells in my mind. "Whitney, something's wrong with the broadcast feed," he shouted over the rumble of the crowd. "There's interference on the main line. Someone's trying to cut your audio, both mics. We're losing control of the signal." My stomach tightened. A deliberate sabotage. Because of her? Because of the girl? Or because someone didn't want this moment to happen? The audience didn't know the details, but they sensed the tension. The cheers shifted into a low, uneasy murmur that rolled across the stadium like distant thunder. Amara clutched the hem of her dress, fear surging back into her eyes. "Miss Whitney, did I do something wrong?" I turned to her immediately.
No, sweetheart. This isn't about you.
"This is about someone trying to control something they shouldn't." "But they're trying to stop us," she whispered, trembling. I placed both hands on her shoulders, grounding her. "And I'm not going to let them." The crew member stepped closer. "The producers want you off stage. They said this is getting out of hand. They want to cut to commercial and reset everything." I stared at him for a long second, disbelief turning into a slow, burning fire. Out of hand? A child sings one note, and it's out of hand. He swallowed. "They said this wasn't approved. They said this could cause problems with the network, the sponsors." "Enough," I said sharply. "I'm just the messenger," he muttered helplessly, raising his hands. The audience watched, confused, restless. Cameras zoomed in. Screens magnified every word, every gesture. Amara stepped closer to me, her small voice trembling. "Should we stop?" I shook my head.
No.
Stopping would teach the wrong lesson. That your voice only matters when someone else approves it. And that's not the world I want you growing up in. She blinked, not fully understanding but trusting me anyway. I stepped forward and lifted the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, projecting my voice across the arena, "it seems there are people backstage who think this moment doesn't belong here. Who think this young girl's voice is a problem."
Gasps.
Murmurs. Confusion spreading like wildfire. "But I believe," I continued, "that a child with courage deserves to be heard. And I won't allow fear or politics or pressure to silence her." The crowd erupted. Thunderous applause. A wave of support that made the stage tremble. Amara's eyes widened as the applause washed over her, a tidal wave of acceptance she had never felt before. She didn't know how to process it. She pressed a hand to her chest, breathing hard. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why are they clapping for me?" "Because they see you," I said. "Maybe for the first time in your life, but they see you." The lights flickered suddenly, once, twice, before stabilizing. The crew member rushed back, panic escalating. "Whitney, the interference is getting stronger. If they lose the feed completely, security is going to come in and—" "Let them try," I said coldly. I lowered myself, so I was eye level with Amara. "Sweetheart," I whispered, "remember what I told you earlier? One note. Just one note from the heart." Her voice quivered. "Can I really do it again?" "Yes," I said. "And this time, Not because I'm asking you to, but because you want to. She swallowed. But what if I'm too scared? Then sing scared, I said softly. Bravery doesn't mean your hands stop shaking. It means you sing anyway. The audience waited, breathless. The tension backstage was a storm ready to break. Spotlights circled the stage, framing the two of us in a halo of electric white. Slowly, Amara stepped in front of me. Her back straightened, her chin lifted, her tiny hands unclenched. And for the first time tonight, she didn't hide behind me. I saw it in her eyes, a flicker of something new. Not fear, not doubt,
But choice. Her choice.
She lifted the microphone with both hands, exhaling a trembling breath. The crowd leaned forward, thousands of hearts sinking with hers. Then, she opened her mouth. And what came out next wasn't a single note. It was something far more powerful. Something that would change everything. The applause faded slowly, like the end of a long, triumphant symphony. Whitney walked off stage with the girl's small hand still trembling inside her own. The moment they had shared, spotlight melting into silence, thousands rising to their feet, felt less like a performance and more like fate stepping forward to speak. Backstage was buzzing with excitement. Crew members whispered, "Did you see that? And that little girl, my God, what a voice." People hurried past with headsets, cameras, and lights, but to Whitney, everything sounded distant, muffled, as though her mind had closed the world out to focus on only one thing, the child who had stunned an audience into awe. "Come with me," Whitney said softly. She led the girl and Carol, her mother, into her dressing room. Carol was still wiping tears with the sleeve of her uniform, unable to believe what had just happened. The girl, wide-eyed, overwhelmed, kept touching her chest as if checking whether her heart was still there. Inside the quiet room, Whitney turned to her. "Do you know what you did tonight?" The girl shook her head timidly. Whitney smiled. "You touched people. You reminded them what hope sounds like." The child's eyes filled instantly. "I was so scared. My knees were shaking." "That's how you know it mattered," Whitney replied. "Fear shows up right before something great happens." Carol stepped forward, voice unsteady. "Ms. Whitney, I don't even know what to say. I never imagined.
I mean, she looks up to you.
She dreams bigger because of you." Whitney saw the exhaustion in Carol's eyes. Years of sacrifice, quiet strength, silent battles fought alone. She understood it. She recognized it. Behind every dreamer was someone who worked twice as hard to keep the dream alive. "You've done an incredible job raising her," Whitney said sincerely. Carol shook her head with a small, embarrassed laugh. "I'm just trying. Some days I don't have much to offer except love." "But love," Whitney replied softly, "is what builds everything else." Silence fell. A tender silence. The kind that lets truth settle. The little girl finally spoke. "Ms. Whitney, do you think I could ever really sing? Like a real singer?" Whitney knelt down until they were face to face. "You already are one." The child's breath hitched. "But we don't have money for classes or anything like that." Whitney reached out and gently tucked a curl behind her ear. "Sweetheart, listen to me. Some people wait a lifetime for a chance. You had courage tonight when it counted. And because of that," she paused, letting the moment take its full shape. "I'm going to help you." Carol gasped softly. "Ms. Whitney." Whitney raised a hand, kindly. "This is my choice. Your daughter has something rare. Something that shouldn't fade because life made things harder." The girl blinked. You want to help me?" "I do," Whitney said, her voice warm and firm. "Not just with lessons. I'm going to make sure you get opportunities. You're not alone in this anymore." The girl covered her mouth, sobbing quietly as she threw her arms around Whitney's neck. Whitney held her tightly, feeling the child's tears soak into the gold fabric of her dress. In that embrace, something shifted in Whitney's spirit. She had spent years giving her voice to the world. But tonight she gave something deeper. She gave a piece of her purpose. When the girl finally pulled back, Whitney gently held her shoulders. "Remember this moment. Not because of me. Because of you. You chose to be brave. The child nodded, glowing like someone who had just discovered her own future. As Carol hugged her daughter, Whitney watched them with a feeling that filled her completely, something she hadn't felt in years.
Hope.
A knock came at the door. Whitney, the press is waiting, but she didn't move right away. Instead, she looked at the girl one last time and said, "This is only the beginning." The girl smiled, radiant. And Whitney knew, some promises don't just guide the future. Some promises echo forever.